my organization is Association for Community Relations, in short ARC. In Romania, that can be shown as a bow that you can actually send arrows with, and I like to play with this metaphor that we can actually aim high and reach far through our work. And that's the purpose of my presentation as well, to talk to you about how you can do that. I think all of you already do amazing work, and I just want to encourage you that through connecting your work to others, that you can actually push bigger changes in society. So, the way I would like to go forward with the presentation is talk a little bit about this idea of social change. First, about myself, I was 13 when Romania changed the regime from the communist regime to the post-communist. So I remember what was before. And also I remember that this 90s, it was a time when there was a lot of interest to change, a lot of interest to build new structures for democracy. And I think this interest continues, but probably the awareness of why we need change is not so high all the time. But I think in this room it is very high, and I think in this room we are talking about people who want to shape their environment and their communities. When I'm thinking about change, I'm thinking about the process of co-creation and co-participation. I don't believe in those big heroes that take the world in their hands, and I also don't believe in the myth of victims. I think all of us have responsibility, and all of us can participate from our position. And in the presentations before the break, you were actually talking a lot about how you work with the people in your communities to make them aware that actually, yes, they can be responsible and they can influence change. So for me, the idea of social change is a lot about people. I'll introduce more about my experience, but many times in communities, when I'm working with leaders, they are saying that their community is not ready for what they want to do. And while I think this is true, that probably when we're working with change, majority of people are not there already. If they were, it would already have been changed. But there is always a minority which embraces your values. So my encouragement to you always is to find this minority and work with them and strengthen this minority, because with them you can create a bigger wave. And also I'm hearing a lot of objections that people are not motivated to be engaged. In my view, and in my experience, anytime I invited somebody to do something, they said yes. I actually did not have experiences in which I tried to invite somebody to join in a cause after talking to them and learning about their motivation, and they would say that they're not interested. So I think if you find ways to connect to what really moves people, then this is more than possible. And also, many times we feel that people that are close to us don't have resources for a big change. I think in our connected world, more and more people actually have resources through their friends and through their families and through their colleagues. So these are some of the principles I want to illustrate with an example from Romania shortly. The second element, if we're talking about systemic change, is time. This does not happen overnight. And the program that I was working on in Romania, I did this for 10 years, so all my 30s. And I think that if you take a long-term perspective, this really changes the way you think about things. If you want to reach a large-scale change, this never happens in one step. So you will need 2 or 3 or 4 steps to reach there. But if you think about the 10-year framework, almost everything that you're working on can actually change a lot in 10 years. So I hope you'll be inspired about this 10-year framework. I was even using it as a joke when somebody was asking me about how different structures in Romania, which of course many things are not working easily. There is also a lot of corruption like in other countries in Europe. And it's very hard to tackle such systemic problems. But if you look at the 10-year framework, almost everything becomes possible. So I'll leave you with that thought. And the third element is you. What actually motivates you? Because if we're talking about 10-year framework, it needs to be something that really moves you. So you want to dedicate 10 years of your time for that. And I think there was this saying from Mahatma Gandhi that you have to be the change you want to see in the world, and I deeply believe that. I also deeply believe that you cannot be that in the beginning. So very possibly you're going to become this change you want to see through the process of engagement. And this is also true for everybody around you. And I think that many times we're looking for people to have motivations for engagement before action. And in the framework that we have in Romania, I think providing a space for action then builds motivation too. So it's a two-way street there. So I kept threatening you with this example from Romania, which now it comes. More than words, and also I think in all our work, showing rather than telling, as you know, works much better. So these are images from different communities in Romania. I have been supporting 16 communities. The cities are very different. These are images, there is the images from Bucharest, which is 2 million. But we work also with cities which are around 30,000 inhabitants, so quite a range of communities. And we have been supporting these communities to build community foundations, which are organizations that would encourage the generosity and responsibility, local responsibility for the needs. And also they would encourage people to understand that they have resources and they can contribute to their community. These are images from the Swim-a-thon. This is an event that uses sports to raise funds. So communities are first encouraged to come with some causes for which they want to raise funds, then with fundraisers, then with friends and families, and on this system actually they can raise quite substantive amounts. In Sibiu, where this image comes from, the half marathon has something around $3,000. The next, you will see, these are images from donor circles, and this is the idea of giving together, that generosity doesn't have to be an individual act, but a collective act as well. similar to your events. They're not necessarily formal events, but they're events that bring people together and create this power that we can actually achieve something. This is the moment when the projects are receiving the news that they have been supported. And besides the money, I think this always is for the leaders of community a huge positive emotional feedback that people like them want to give money to their projects and they can actually receive support. This is one of the projects which was supported in Cluj. This is the demo they made at the donor circle. And I chose this project because, as you know about parkour, it challenges us to push our borders and to actually see obstacles as stepping stones. This comes from the words of the leader of that project, which you saw. The next images come from the Science Fund, and these types of funds happen in more than one community, bringing together usually IT companies, schools, parents, NGOs to work together on the idea of making science education more interesting and giving more chance for good employment later on in the same community. These are images that are from Bucharest, from one of the neighborhoods that has more difficulties, also in terms of economics, also in terms of communication between Roma and non-Roma, and it's about supporting those communities finding good solutions. And the last example comes from the Youth Bank. This is a fund which is managed by young people. I think in some of the countries you have it, probably you have learned about it. But the idea is that young people raise money and are also grant-making money to other young people. So both the fundraising mechanism and this grant-making mechanism, I think they're both showing two sides of a coin, which is about engaging other people in doing what they feel they want to be doing and what they like to be doing. These are some of the images from Community Foundation people coming together. These are actually showing what we do to support them, and what I showed before is what community foundations do to support their communities, and this is more about our role to connect and help them learn from each other, like it's happening in this conference. I don't have to convince you about the utility of this strategy. But it's very important to me, because I've been there for 10 years, is to see how the field evolves from the startup phase, where there were 3 people who were interested in this idea, to the current situation where you see images from conference where there are 80 people who are working each day to support this idea. And for me this as well is interesting to illustrate how by providing support to build capacities, to connect people, to build skills, we actually can help things grow and multiply in time. Yes, that was not the plan, but I think that was the key message and also the time. So actually I would encourage to go to questions. Or
we have around 10 minutes, maximum 10 minutes for questions. So, floor is yours. You've got just one mic, so you either stand up and ask loud, or I will hand over the mic to you. Both possible. Good. So, brave first person. Yes.
You just like to ask a very nice presentation. Thank you. What values drive your community foundation? Like what, in terms of equality or human rights? Just be interested to know. Is that important for you, the values?
Shall I answer? Yes, I think values are very important, and thank you for the question. Actually, I think that's the whole idea. Why do we want to build community foundations? And the reason why we want to build community foundations is because we want to see communities which are more generous, which are more inclusive, which are more conscious about their own development. And I think there was one more word which I know, but it's probably connected to responsibility and sustainability. So we actually did have this discussion inside the movement, what we want to stand for and why we're doing these things. And these are important elements, obviously. And yes, I was thinking what gives success of a good strategy. And for me, it makes sense to plan and to invest in a strategy for the future if you can actually leave the world a more just place. So I think that's an essential element. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. Yes.
So you were talking about the road of 10 years, and I would like to ask what are the assumptions that were challenged when you think it differently now than you thought at the beginning of the road?
I think one of the first assumptions is actually about the success. We can say that we exceeded the expectations compared to our initial plans in the number of community foundations, but what exceeded our expectation was the interest from the community leaders. And I think the explanation is that we launched this program in a moment in which Romania was really feeling that it's moving ahead, and where a lot of people were kind of tired of this idea of building for themselves, and a lot of people started to have family and roots in a community. They didn't want to go abroad. Probably you have this reality too. So then they said, well, we cannot rely on politicians, or we cannot rely on the businesses to provide things for us. We actually need to take action ourselves. So there was this trend in society, and it actually took us by surprise. We were hopeful, but this was more than what we expected. It also created some pressure. On the other hand, I think in terms of time, some processes always take longer than you expect. And I was learning a lot about this gap time, that actually you can have some interventions, but then you have to wait to give them a chance to have results. You don't have to continue doing things. You have to leave some space for some gaps, because this is a space for maturation, for building something. So these are some assumptions. I don't know what others.
Hi, Alina. Thank you for sharing. Building on that last question, and given that you've had so much success over the past 10 years, what do you see as the biggest challenges for the next 10 years for your work? A loaded question. I think you've already touched on some of the points, but maybe you could summarize.
Thank you. I was thinking about this momentum idea and how actually it's rather easy to build momentum when you do new things, and when you're trying to look at it in the sustainability perspective, is it equally easy or not? And actually, I had some more figures to show, but I won't try to go in that direction. But what it shows on one hand is that the last year has been an exponential growth. So it actually doubled the previous year, while for the first 7 years the growth was more steady. So actually, for some things you need to do them more than once until they get to a level that can provide the results. So that's one lesson for me. But then the next question is, can you sustain this? Or like I showed you the fundraising events or the donor circles, after you do them 10 times, will there still be energy, or you actually need to come with new ideas for the community? And I think it's probably both. I mean, if community wants to continue with this, they should have the right to do so. And at the same time, I think our role would be to look for what is next. Because through these events, donors learn more about the needs in their community, and it's up to us and the community foundations to stimulate them to take the next step. So I think that's always the challenge, how you can actually come back to the same idea, but do it in a way that adds something, and it's not purely repetition. So for me, that's one key challenge.
Okay, we have time for our last question. Maybe.
Okay, but not the last one yet, because it's a very practical question. How would you describe the community that you work with?
So the community that I work with are the leaders who are interested to support their local communities. So this is my key constituency. I'm supporting these leaders so they in turn can do their work.
Okay, we can have more questions, but it will shorten your lunchtime, if you don't mind.
We didn't come here to eat.
Okay, so the questions now.
Hello, I'm from the Happy Village actually today. I have a practical question. First, when you take a look, because you're doing donor stuff as well, you're doing philanthropy, do you see, when you compare, for example, last 5 years, is it raising the amount of donors, the number of philanthropy persons that would like to support the local community in Romania? That's the first question. Second is, you probably do this donor circle in Bucharest, I suppose. Okay, then the better. The better is, if you're doing it in Bucharest, for example, and then you do events in Iași, Sibiu, Timișoara, or the other places, is there a big difference of how much you can get from donors in terms of the talents? And the last one is how do you see the crowdfunding or the philanthropy by sports, if this is the priority you will have for next years, or this is a bit more like PR, or is it the thing that works for you in communities? So.
Oh, 5 questions.
Sorry, I remember them. I think first was about the donors, if the context is changing, and I think the context is changing in the sense that you see much more people who do give and they want to give and they talk about it with their friends. So if we look at numbers, then it becomes kind of more part of the culture, it's much more used tool. So I think we do see this context change. Also, an important context change in Romania is that NGOs were relying a lot on corporate money, and then they kind of realized the limitation of that, and actually looking at individual support would give them more freedom and independence. So I think that's also a change recently. And a very important change for Romania is that we're trying to cultivate mechanisms for regular giving. So even those donors who give through SMS, now they have opportunity to send an SMS but make a regular donation. And from the perspective of art, it's important to encourage giving which is in a relationship, because this relationship then allows for sharing results, allows for building trust, and allows for going for what is next after this start in the relationship. So this is what we would like to see more. So the first question was about the donors. The second question was about donor circles. And yeah, donor circles are actually in 9 or 10 communities. It just happened last week. There is one in Făgăraș, which is, as I mentioned, the 30,000 inhabitants community, and it works very well. The amounts raised are actually smaller, probably half. But the whole donor circle methodology is to actually set the targets at the level that the community can contribute. So everything works similarly, just the projects ask for more or less money in Bucharest or in Făgăraș. And I think that's quite important, because you want to build a feeling of success, and also you don't want to make donors struggle with giving, so over-rely on them. So it's better to actually raise less funds, but make it part of an event which is empowering both for donors and for the projects, than to raise much more funds but struggle with that. So that would be our kind of idea. And I think it works in practice too this way. So yeah, there is a difference. But for donor circles, the greatest value in my view are not the money, they're important, but the relationship that forms between donors and between donors and projects. So these are the elements that are critical. And the last one was?
It was about the sports and the crowdfunding you're doing, if that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, it works because it provides both opportunity to have fun, practice a hobby, get together at an event. And I think what makes it very helpful is, for example, for NGOs, it appears to them that nobody wants to support their work, or they're the only NGO that does fundraising. And when you bring together in an event everybody who does that, it does give it more of a feeling of force coming together. So I think there are also good elements, but I think obviously it's a limited tool. And as I was saying before, I think community foundations need to provide other opportunities for engagement and opportunities when donors can actually learn more about the issues, learn how to make more strategic contributions. So this will be probably for the future as well.
Okay, so I think now it's time for the last question.
She says no.
Hello, I have question, how exactly, could you please give me exact example how you work with
these communities, like you just mentioned, you work with many. I have 3 questions. The second question is, do you have, sorry, but quick ones. Do you have ethics, some ethics rules that you follow? And third question is, how do you ensure that you stay free in freedom? I mean, that no one, for example, very rich would come and use you as an organization for its own purposes. Thank you.
I'll try to be quick, although those questions are so interesting. How we work with communities. Actually, it was very interesting because we did not work with already formed groups, but we let people know that we can give support if they want to learn more about community foundations, and leaders form new groups for this idea. So it wasn't very easy because some of the people had no experience with NGOs, but they had experience in other areas of work. Usually they might come from IT, media, education, human resources, and so on. So we could actually rely on their expertise, but there was also some learning about how this works in this new context. So for this, we used a lot of study visits to show existing community foundations in Romania and also in UK, and use this practical approach to help them think about what they want to do. And in general, we focus more about the idea of creating a vision than providing the tools. I think you can see them from my speech as well, which was supposed to be inspiring and practical. We really focus more on this level. And other things we did, as I showed, workshops, peer-to-peer learning, and also providing flexible financial support for the startup phase. Ethics rules, yes, the community foundations have a code of principles and standards, which was discussed with the first community foundations, and now it's regularly updated by the Association of Community Foundations. And we're looking at governance, we're looking at the way foundations do programs and their impact in communities and their relationship with donors. And the standards are obviously about openness, about some good management practices, but also we're trying to, through the standards, to protect the independence of community foundations. For example, in the governance structure, you wouldn't want an organization or a donor or somebody else to actually control the community foundation. So how we protect the freedom in the relationship with donors, I think that is up to the community foundations and their negotiation power. But I think a way to protect the freedom is actually to have very varied sources of funds, so that you don't depend on one donor, and that's a good way to start. And secondly, to have professionals who can actually stand up to some requests which are strange from the perspective of professional practice, and who can shape that relationship, and who know what is the good practice in the field. So in Romania, each community foundation has at least one paid staff, but many have 2 or 3, so we're trying to support professional development for these people.
Okay, I have to play the bad guy, so we're done. Thank you very much, Alina.